There are life-changing lessons that we can learn from the current real estate crisis in Vancouver. In April 2025, there were over 16,000 properties listed for sale in Greater Vancouver alone. That's the highest level of active listings that we've seen since 2014, 11 years ago. At the same time, the sales for that month totaled 2,163, which is almost 30% below the 10-year seasonal average. In other words, we have the highest level of homes for sale in the last decade, at the same time, some of the lowest sales we've seen in years. Condo sellers and sellers who bought at the peak of real estate prices in 2021, 2022, and 2023 are some of the most vulnerable. They can't get out of the market without losing, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. In today's video, we will talk about what we can learn from the mistakes of these sellers and how we can avoid making the same mistakes in the future. As Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Some sellers in today's market are affected more than others, and in my opinion, the most affected sellers, the sellers that lose the most money, are the pre-sale condo buyers that have bought in 2022 and 2023. I have made a separate video talking about this subject. I will leave that video linked in the description below this video. In a nutshell, thousands of buyers have purchased pre-sale properties in 2022 and 2023 in the hopes that the prices will go up or at least remain the same. However, fast forward to today, 2025, a lot of these projects are getting completed, and according to appraisals, they're actually worth less today than they were when they were originally purchased 2-3 years ago, which means that a lot of buyers are underwater right off the bat, and when they're trying to sell their units or assign their units, it's much more difficult for them and they're losing a lot of money. If we zoom out a little bit and not only focus on the pre-sale construction, but focus on the market in general, a lot of other condo sellers are struggling to sell their units. And there are some reasons why. From my experience, at the moment, good units in desirable buildings are still selling and selling fairly well. However, other units on the surface, seemingly really nice, for whatever reason are not selling, and the sellers are having a really hard time. So what's going on? Well, there are some lessons that we can learn. Number one, units with terrible floor plans are not selling well. That might sound like a very obvious statement, but let me explain. From my experience, some developers are really fixed on investor type buyers, and they're building a lot of units that are specifically designed for rentals and specifically designed to be sort of subdivided. They have these sort of glass walls. They have a way to have 2-3 different roommates live in a small space. Now, when the market slows down, investors exit the market, you have to sell these units to the end users. And when end users, first-time home buyers, have choices, they don't want to buy these units for obvious reasons. They're not very comfortable, they're not very practical, and they're not great for long-term use. What I see happen, tenants moved out of these units for one reason or another, and the investors are trying to sell them, but nobody wants them. And getting another tenant into this unit is tougher because the rents have dropped. Next, let's talk about units without parking spots. In some areas, these units are extremely difficult to sell. I remember in about 2016, 2017, a lot of developers decided that they're not going to build units with parking spots. And in some areas, it's totally fine. For example, in downtown Vancouver, a lot of people don't have cars. They work in downtown, and if they need a car, they can use an Uber or one of the ride-sharing services. However, other areas, it was a little bit too ambitious to assume that future buyers will not want to have a vehicle. And I'm talking about areas such as Fairview, Olympic Village area. I'm talking about Kitsilano. I'm talking about Mount Pleasant area of Falls Creek and Fairview around the Vancouver General Hospital, as well as the Canby corridor. A lot of those units were built without parking spaces, and the first buyers back in 2022, 2023, and so on, were buying these units, and they were totally fine without the car because their lifestyle allowed them not to have a vehicle. However, now, fast forward to 2025, a lot of people are back to working from office, and a lot of people in general just still have cars. So when the market slows down and your unit has no parking space, and some of these units are in areas where there is no easy street parking either, so it's not like you can just leave your car parked on the street. A lot of them are either permit parking, and a lot of these addresses are not qualified to apply for the permit parking. Some of these areas only have 2 to 3 hour limits, so you can't park overnight. And now these units are sitting on the market. So be careful when you're buying one of these units without parking spots. Not only think about your current lifestyle, but also think about the lifestyle of the future purchasers of these units. Condo units in older buildings seem to be selling better than brand new units. There are several reasons for that, at least in my opinion. Number one, they're usually cheaper, so they're easier to get into. Number two, they usually have better floor plans. However, not all older buildings are created equal. And here I want to talk about maintenance. Usually when the market slows down, especially when the market slows down due to higher interest rates, strata corporations, strata councils like to vote down a lot of maintenance because a lot of people cannot afford to pay these special levies. Let's say the roof needs to be replaced. They bring it up at the special general meeting and it gets voted down. Then it gets brought up again next year and gets voted down, and so on and so on. So when the future prospective buyer looks at strata documents and they see 3 to 4 years in a row this project gets voted down, first of all, the project still needs to be completed. It's not like the roof problem went away, so that's still hanging over the strata. But secondly, a lot of other maintenance was postponed. Maybe the fencing also needs to be replaced, but of course no one's going to replace the fencing before they replace the roof. So not only does this maintenance weighing over the strata, there's other maintenance piling on. And from my experience, when I look at a lot of these properties with clients at the current slower market, they don't want to deal with this piled on maintenance. So be very careful with these type of buildings, even in the good times, if they keep on voting down maintenance. If it's deferred a year, maybe 2 years, a lot of times it's okay because it will still get done. But if you see year over year, the maintenance get sort of postponed and postponed and postponed, and the current owners of the building don't really want to do much of the maintenance with that building, that's a major red flag. Another group of sellers that I see lose a lot of money right now and try to get out of the properties at a loss are investors who are focused on one type of strategy, either trying to rent out to international students or focus on the Airbnb business. On the Airbnb side, it's pretty obvious. It's almost impossible at the moment to legally rent out your unit. So that stream of income has almost dried down. On the other hand, international students' numbers have also been greatly reduced, which means that a lot of these investment strategies are no longer working and the sellers are looking to exit at a pretty huge loss. In a similar category are people who bought cottages during COVID. If you remember those crazy times, a lot of people were sort of buying up anything that they could, including cottages. The cottage industry was going really well in BC. I personally don't focus on that type of business too much myself, but I know a lot of my colleagues were getting phone calls left and right, and the prices were really going up quite a bit. Now, fast forward to 2025, these properties are not in such a high demand, and a lot of sellers are losing money. And speaking of high demand and crazy times, let's talk about people who bought during peaks at the crazy multiple offer situations. I'm not blaming these type of buyers because I remember those times. They were extremely difficult to navigate through. You had places sell $100,000, $200,000 over asking price. You had places with 20 plus offers. So if you were a buyer at that time, it seemed as if every offer you made wasn't good enough. And the next offer you had to up it and up it and up it and so on until you reached your limit. And sometimes you had to go over your limit. Well, now a lot of these people are really struggling because in real estate, you make money when you purchase the property, not when you sell the property. It might sound counterintuitive, but when you purchase the property is the only time you can actually control. That's when you control how much you pay. When you sell, it's very difficult to control how much you're going to get. Like for instance, right now, a lot of these condos are not in high demand and you're not getting as much money as you would like. And in a lot of cases, you're not getting as much money as you paid for the unit. So the lesson here is to take a step back and think about what's going on in the market and whether the conditions are right or not for you to buy. Which brings me to the next lesson we can learn, and that's not to listen to real estate agents and industry experts. I know it's very ironic because I am a real estate agent making this video telling you about the lessons. At the same time, I'm telling you not to listen to real estate agents. What I mean is that you should treat your real estate agent as almost like your coach or an advisor. They're there to give you guidance, give you advice, but at the end of the day, you're the one who has to make the decisions. You're the one who knows what's best for your family, what type of property is best for your family, and whether right now is a good time to buy or not. So take everything, I guess, with a grain of salt and do a lot of your own research. And the last lesson I want to highlight in this video is to focus on the longer term. I'm talking about 8 to 10 years. People that hold their properties for 8 to 10 years usually do a lot better because that's usually how long the sales cycle takes. The market is cyclical, it goes up and down, but usually 10 years is the turnaround point. So if you're buying a property and you let yourself hold it for up to 10 years, I think you will be in a much better situation. The shorter the amount of time you hold a property for, the riskier the investment becomes. Because of course, real estate is not a liquid investment. Getting your money out can sometimes be very hard. So if you focus on the longer term, 10 years, usually you would do better. I appreciate you watching this video all the way until the end. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you're looking to buy your first property in Vancouver, you just don't know where to start, I have an absolutely free buyer's guide linked in the description of this video. It's free, you don't need to sign up for anything. It's not a sales pitch. It's just there to help you understand the process. And once again, the link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.